हीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। जमुना तीरावनचारी। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा, प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा, प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। ब्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर नवदीप धाम की जय। पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा मैया जमुना मैया की जय। भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय। समवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। कलयुग पावन हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। All glorious assembled devotees, all glorious assembled devotees, all glorious assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, text number 32. तस्य पुत्रोति तेजस्वी विहरन् बालकोर्भकैः राज्ञाघं प्रापितं तातं श्रुत्वा तत्रेदमब्रवीत्। तस्य पुत्रोति तेजस्वी विहरन् बालकोर्भकैः राज्ञाघं प्रापितं तातं श्रुत्वा तत्रेदमब्रवीत्। तस्य पुत्रोति तेजस्वी विहरन् बालकोर्भकैः राज्ञाघं प्रापितं तातं श्रुत्वा तत्रेदमब्रवीत्। तस्य पुत्रो तेजस्वी विहरन् बालकोर्भकैः राज्ञाघं प्रापितं तातं श्रुत्वा तत्रेदमब्रवीत्। तस्य पुत्रोति तेजस्वी विहरन् बालकोर्भकैः राज्ञाघं प्रापितं तातं तत्रेदमब्रवीत्। सत्यपुत्रोति तेजस्वी विहरन् बालकोर्भकैः राज्ञाघं प्रापितं तातं श्रुत्वा तत्रेदमब्रवीत्। माताजी, तस्य पुत्रोति तेजस्वी विहरन् बालकोर्भकैः राज्ञाघं प्रापितं तातं श्रुत्वा तत्रेदमब्रवीत्। तस्य his, the sages, putrah, son, ati, extremely, tejasvi, powerful, viharan, while playing, balakah, with boys, arbhakaihi, who were all childish, rajna, by the king, agham, distress, prapitam, made to have, tatam, the father, shrutva, by hearing, tatra, then and there, idam, this, abravit, spoke. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. Purport. Due to Maharaj Parikshit's good government, even a boy of tender age who was playing with other inexperienced boys could become as powerful as a qualified Brahmana. This boy was known as Shringi, and he achieved good training in Brahmacharya by his father, so that he could be as powerful as a Brahmana even at that age. But because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy under the influence of Kali, and thus cultural life began to dwindle day after day. The first victim of Brahmanical injustice was Maharaj Parikshit, and thus the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was slackened. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaha Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. Hare Krishna. Very heart-wrenching to see a great king like Maharaj Parikshit being subject to what Prabhupada writes, Brahmanical injustice. And he says Maharaj Parikshit was the first such victim. Very painful. When Maharaj Parikshit was later on cursed to die in 7 days and 7 nights, the subjects, as we read in the 12th canto of Bhagavatam, they were very distressed. How can he be cursed to die? Such a noble king. Yet, however, Prabhupada writes, this was also the arrangement of the Lord, a plan by which Kali can enter to spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life. Now, as very beautifully illustrated in the purport, we'll try and understand this from two perspectives, from two contexts. One is the perspective of Svadharma. For a Brahmana, it was very natural to educate, to forgive, to enlighten, guide, counsel. And for a Kshatriya, it's but natural to respect knowledge, to actually provide a facility by which knowledge can be spread. Now, unfortunately, though Maharaj Parikshit had kept Kali at bay all through, there's one occasion of putting a serpent around the neck of Shringi's father, and Shringi, empowered by Maharaj Parikshit's own order, by Maharaj Parikshit's discipline, empowered by that, Shringi is now going to disrespect Maharaj Parikshit to an extent which probably is unfathomable, cursing him, right? So, in some sense, where is Svadharma? However, we also look at this from the sadhana perspective. How Maharaj Parikshit used this opportunity to intensify his process of Shravanam and facilitate Kirtanam in his kingdom. Now, when there is sadhana, Swadharma will also find its place. But when sadhana is lacking, even Svadharma, efforts to sustain Svadharma can become very difficult. Right? And we see this very clearly from an Adhibhautika level. We had the good fortune of a lot of association of His Grace Gopi Parandana Prabhu, a great scholar, and so often in his lectures, in one-to-one discussions, he would say the foundation stone of Varnashrama is the cooperation between Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, or the Brahmanical principle and the Kshatriya principle have to come together and harmonize. And that's exactly what we find, unfortunately, is put at stake, that cooperation. This has happened time and again. And what we find time and again is that when this cooperation is put at stake, one also has to get deeper. Right? So from an Adhibhautika perspective, it's a cooperation. Is healthy conversation, which is what the hallmark of all the Vedic literature is. But when that is in peril, and also goes deeper from an adhyatmic perspective and intensifies one's sadhana. We'll see some examples of how, when in a conversation, in an interaction, when both parties have very refined behavior, have high standards of behavior, how the interaction becomes so sweet and fruitful. And we also see examples, this being in the extreme case, where in an interaction, one of the parties, the party that is acting, may be somewhat irresponsible, not setting the highest standard of behavior, and the other party, despite an apparent asymmetry, despite an apparent lack of cultured behavior from one end, still maintains sanctity. That was Maharaj Parikshit. So let's understand, I would say, an example that probably is not something we look up to. The case of Drupada and his long childhood friend, Dronacharya, who studied in the same Gurukul. Dronacharya was brought up as a Brahmana. Drupada was brought up as a king. And we all know the story. We'll only shed light on certain important perspectives. Right? We know the story of how Drupada was very prosperous. Dronacharya, on the other hand, could not even offer milk to his son, to the extent that it's explained in some stories that the son of Dronacharya, when he was seeking some milk, his friends, they actually mixed tuna in lime, in water, and presented them as milk, and he got cheated. He was so sad. Dronacharya approached Drupada because he remembered that I have a friend, and not only a friend, the friend who had during childhood days promised me that he's always available. And all he asked was some small help. Drupada told Drona, circumstances make one friend, and the same circumstances can make one enemy. In fact, this was characteristic of the relation thereafter. Dronacharya was obviously hurt, and Drupada, he asked Dronacharya to leave. Dronacharya took a vow that I am going to actually destroy Drupada. Dronacharya had students in the form of Guru Dakshina. He asked Arjuna, the Pandavas, and of course also offered to the Kauravas the opportunity to get Drupada as a bandhi. The Pandavas obliged. Half the kingdom he gave back in Dan to Drupada, which was again adding salt to injury. And Drupada was so hurt. He had a son, Drishtadyumna, with the only goal of killing Dronacharya. And Duryodhana very nicely says, nicely in the sense, sarcastically comments, that your own son, tava shishyena dhimata, your own shishya, Drishtadyumna, the son of Drupada, was trained by you to kill yourself, or rather to destroy us. So you see the entire interaction became so sour and unfortunate. all we can say is unfortunate. I mean, we cannot claim to be more refined than Dronacharya. But yes, this is not an example we would like to emulate. Let's see other examples. So while we see the example of Dronacharya or Shringi not setting the highest standards of action from one end, and while we see the example of Drupada also from the other end, not setting the highest standard of response, Parikshit Maharaj, he set such a high standard of response. And his standard of response was based on going deep within the heart, as Radha Gopinath Prabhu often says, that the more the tree grows, the larger it grows in size, the more the fruit laden it is, the deeper its roots need to go. And here was the depth of Maharaj Parikshit, seeking out the shelter of Shukdev Goswami, wanting to hear and immerse. Pipata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam. Muhuraho Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka. I mean, relishing every verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Shyamanand Prabhu and I, we have been discussing the last couple of months, and one interesting characteristic is how several conversations, several interactions, communications can turn very unhealthy when there is lack of empathy and respect for the other side. And here we find exactly that happening. There's no respect. I mean, forget about basic sense. No, there's only insult to Parikshit Maharaj from Shringi's side. Sometimes we wonder, can a family run if one side is not respectful? We'll see many more examples. Yes, it's possible. As long as one of the sides is willing to go deep, one of the sides is willing to avoid trivializing and respecting the other end. At least create a culture of listening, respecting. So another beautiful example is from the Ramayana, which is also alluded to in the Mahabharata and several other scriptures. And that's a story of Vishwamitra. Again, Vishwamitra was a king. He ventured into, actually he was going on a campaign. He was going around expanding his kingdom. According to some scriptures, he actually neglected, he was so in an expansionist mode, so much in an expansionist mode and control mode, that even some of the farmers he was inducting into his army. Right? So, as a result, when he kept venturing into expansionist activities, one of the events he met Vasishta Muni. He came to the ashram of Vasishta. Now, Vasishta, he was very much engaged like a Brahmana in sadhana, in yajna for the welfare of the society. So, when they met, it's interesting how their interaction was very cultured to begin with. We talked about Svadharma. Each of them was inquiring whether the other is being facilitated in his Svadharma. So, for example, you find this question, Pratigrihya tam pujam vasishtad raja sattamaha tapognihotra shishyeshu kushalam paryapricchata. So Vishwamitra had received a lot of hospitality from Vasishta, and he paryapricchata, he asked, Pujam, are you able to perform your puja? Are you able to perform your sadhana specifically? Are you able to maintain your austerities? And interestingly, do you have trees, sufficient vanaspati? Because you need herbs, you need to have ahuti. So are you well taken care of? Because implicit in this is also the responsibility of the king. Is all that being facilitated for you? And Vishwamitra, in response to Vishwamitra's question, Vasishta, he said everything is fine. And then he also asked, in response, he says, Kachide sambhruta bhutyaha, kachit tishthanti shasane, kachite vijita sarve, ripavo ripusudana. Ripusudana, I know you are conquering enemies. Are you taking care of everyone in your Rajya very nicely? Is your shasan going on properly? Is everyone satisfied in obeying your command? See, one thing is to obey command by biting your teeth, but the other is also being naturally obedient, organically obedient. Have your enemies been conquered? Now, this way, it began with a very pleasant note, and in fact, after the pleasantries, when Vasishta offered to take care of Vishwamitra and his entire army, Vishwamitra said, no, eva mukto vasishtena Vishwamitro mahamatihi kritamitya abravid raja priyavakyena metvaya. Priyavakyena metvaya. You spoke such beautiful words. You care for me as a king. You care for all of us. We are all satisfied with your priyavakyam. However, Vasishta, because he was a Brahmana, he also wanted to serve. He wanted to give. It's very natural to give for a Brahmana. So he said, please accept our hospitality beyond just the roots and fruits and sweet words. So Vishwamitra says, fine, if you want to offer. And then he offered. And we know, Kamadhenu, the desire fulfilling cow of Vasishtha. I mean, the scriptures explain that according to the nature of the people, some of them who are, sometimes there are army soldiers who need to be, Rajoguna, and sometimes they sublime to Tamoguna. So they ask for all kinds of drinks. All that was provided for, and this made Vishwamitra extremely curious. Okay, how is it that you were able to provide for so much? And then he saw, it's actually Kamadhenu. Please, I am willing to give 100,000 cows in exchange for your Sabala. This cow is a gem. Please give her to me. And he said, I am a king. Therefore, the Sabala belongs to me. Now he started staking his claim. And look at the response of Vishwamitra. It's very refined. He says, Na pratyaga maharyeyam matsakasha darindanama shashwati sabala mahyam kirtiratmavato yatha. Kirtiratmavato yatha. Just like kirti or fame cannot be separated from a righteous man. Similarly, Sabala cannot be separated from me. Why? Because Sabala is helping facilitate all the yajnas I do. It was not that Vasishta was providing for feasts every day in and day out. That was an exception. On a routine basis, Sabala had an integral role to play in the sadhana, so to speak, of Vasishta. This is sadhana. Now, this simply did not register with Vishwamitra. Unfortunate, right? King. And we see, it is not that Vishwamitra did not have the background, but how he responded in the spur of the moment is also characterized by how deep our sadhana is. And Vishwamitra himself admits this later. So, Vishwamitra, he sees the cow, Nandini, just like, one tries to seize the moon or a white swan. So, when Nandini was being taken away, Vasishta in fact appealed. He appealed saying that, Kshatriyanam balam tejo, this is from the Mahabharata, the previous verses are from Ramayana. He says, Kshatriyanam balam tejo, Brahmananam shama balam. Shama mam bhajate yasmat gamyatam yadi rochate. He's telling Nandini, see, if you want to go with Vishwamitra, you can go. That's how detached he was. Right? Not possessive. He says, Kshatriyanam balam tejo. The bal, the strength of Kshatriya is this valor. So he is exhibiting his valor for the right cause. That's a question. Brahmananam kshama balam. Because for a Brahmana, the strength is forgiveness, is tolerance. So I need to exercise that. However, when Nandini started appealing, then Vasishta said, yes, if you think you need to be with me, let it be so. Right? So he responded, reciprocated with Nandini's desire to actually remain with Vasishta. It was reciprocal. That's very important. Sadhana is always integral. Prabhupada used to say the process of chanting the holy name, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, is not an imposition on the mind. It's very natural. And Prabhupada used to say it's like that of a child crying out for its mother. Very natural. So here you see Nandini and Vasishta. They actually had a very integral relation. And then in response from Nandini's existence, from body, so many soldiers, weapons, all of them emerged and destroyed, and annihilated Vishwamitra and his entire army. So after this, what was, again, see, these levels of introspection of Vishwamitra, if you appreciate them, we also develop deep appreciation for what Maharaj Parikshit did. Maharaj Parikshit actually transcended all these levels. There's no escaping, it's only transcending. Because if you try and escape, you'll get stuck again, right? Asman se gira, khajur mein atka. So this is actually transcending, which Maharaj Parikshit did here. What is Vishwamitra's reflection? Oh, he is able to exhibit his power because the Brahmana might, Brahma might is the true might. And how did he react to it? Again we find, let me now intensify my pursuit. He worshipped Lord Shiva. For power and not for increasing Sattva Guna, not for letting go. Maharaj Parikshit let go. Here Vishwamitra Muni got more entangled. He worshipped Lord Shiva, asked for all kinds of Astra Shastra. There's also mention of, knowledge, divine knowledge of weapons. And then, having acquired all of that, it said that he again attacked, right? He attacked Vasishta with all the weapons he had now obtained. Now this is again the example of fruitive activities in Rajoguna. We see fruitive activities in Rajoguna. Later on in the Sarga 57 of the Ramayana, we find tapas in Rajoguna, which also Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. And then finally, in 59th Sarga of the Balakanda, this is narrated, by the way, by Shatananda, the son of Gautama Rishi, to Rama and Lakshmana. So in the 59th Sarga, we find Yajna in Rajoguna. So fruitive activity, what did he say? He was contemplating that now I will acquire these weapons by higher powers and destroy Vasishta. But what happened was the discipline of Vasishta and his sadhana. Actually, Vasishta had no interest in retaliating. It's not that Vasishta was parallelly preparing to counter. So the saints came to Vasishta saying, Vishwamitra is now attacking us with all his weapons. Batato vai Vasishtasya ma bhairiti muhurmuhu nashayamadya godheyam niharam iva bhaskaraha. Niharam iva bhaskaraha. Just like the sun will dispel the morning mist, Vasishta said, don't worry. Ma bhair, don't worry. Iti muhurmuhu. Again reassured. I will now respond to Vishwamitra. He didn't just react, he responded. Reaction is often very impulsive. And because Vishwamitra had come and it was actually destroying her, in fact he appealed, he said, Ashramam chira samriddham. Why, Vishwamitra, are you destroying this ashrama? I mean, all this has been developed over long periods of time. Why do you destroy it? And then he had this Brahmadanda. Now we have from Vishwamitra different weapons, including Brahmastra. One end is Brahmastra, the other end is Brahmadanda. Brahmadanda reflects tolerance, reflects the thought of well-being of others. Udara Hridaya. That is Brahmadanda. You might see that rishis, they used to have this Brahmadanda. Also effective for, performing their sadhana. So, very interesting verse here. Tadapyasvam mahaghoram brahmam brahmena tejasa vasishto grasate sarvam brahmadandena raghava. So by Brahmadanda, Brahmastra got defeated. And now this was again a bouncer for Vishwamitra. I thought all these weapons will put them totally in the back foot, but no. And then he says, Digbalam, Digbalam. Dikkar hai. Digbalam, Kshatriya balam, Brahma tejo balam, balam. Right? Brahma teja is the balam, real balam. Ekera Brahma dandena sarvastrani hatani cha. Ek Brahma danda se sab vinash kar diya. All that had acquired. Right? So again he said, let me now get that Brahma teja. Brahma tattvam is the word used. See, again he objectified. We say sadhana, but sadhana for what? What is the sadhya? His sadhya was weapons, his sadhya was pratishodha. You see through all this how sattva pradhan behavior can overcome passion oriented behavior. So in the Sargas 57 of the Balakanda of Ramayanam, we find this interesting verse. Tata santapta hridayaha smarannigrahamatmanaha minishasya kritavairo mahatmanaha. So Vishwamitra went into meditation and kept on remembering, mere saath aisa hua tha. This is what happened to me. This is what happened to me. So with vaira, with that animosity, with that enmity, what did he do? He went into tapasya. And he did tapasya, only sustaining on fruits and roots with senses under control, external senses, but his mind was filled with this thought. This became his sadhya. So he went and he performed these, and then Brahmaji came and he said, well, you have performed a lot of tapasya. Tapascha sumahat taptam rajarshi riti mam viduhu. So he came and he said, you become a rajarshi. That was a shock for Vishwamitra. After all this, I just become a rajarshi. He says, Devas sarshi gana sarve nasti banye tabhaphalam. All the Devarshi they came, nasti manye tabhaphalam, mere tab ka yahi phal hai. They only recognize me as a rajarshi. So this is the problem. And we see, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, how when one performs tapasya, or in Rajoguna, what is the contemplation of one performing tapasya in Rajoguna? Satkaramana pujartham tapodambhena chaivayat kriyate tadiha proktam rajasam chalamadhruvam. Satkara, I should be out of pride, satkara for respect, mana for getting out of one's arrogance, pride, pujartham for being honored, worship. This is exactly what happened. And because of that Rajoguna, what happened? It's neither stable nor permanent, Krishna says. Rajasam chalam adhruvam. You can't sustain it. Now he is frustrated after being called Rajarshi. So then comes the next step. He says, fruitive activities didn't work. Tapa did not work because the sadhya was itself temporary, was ephemeral. So then he says, let me do the following. Now there is a king called Trishanku from Ikshvaku dynasty. The same Ikshvaku dynasty for whom, where Lord Ram descended and for whom the counselor was Vasishtha. I have a chance to prove myself. Because there is this king Trishanku who wants to go to heaven in this very same body. Trishanku, 3 things he did. 3 pivots on which he was standing, he destroyed them. First, going to heavens in the same body, which means you're so attached to this body. That is violating the first leg. Shanku is also like a pin. Second pin, Trishanku had gone to the sons of Vasishtha and said, please. So he actually approached Vasishtha first. He said, Vasishtha, please help me go. Vasishtha said, not possible. So, because Vasishtha did not agree, he went to Vasishtha's son. That's the third part. First is desiring to go in the body, the same mortal body to Swarga. Second, approaching Vasishta and then being rejected by Vasishta, didn't follow Vasishta. Third, he went to Vasishta's sons, who again made the same point. Why do you want to go, violate, right? That which is organic and dharmic. So then, Vishwamitra latched onto that opportunity. And he went. He said, oh, be rest assured. Swarga is in my hand and you are in my hands. Therefore, Swarga is in your hands. And he performed yajna. So Krishna says, Adhisandhaya tu phalam dambartham api chaiva yat ijjate bharata shrestha tam yajnam vidhi rajasam. So two things, right? Abhisandhaya, so desiring material benefit, and then tu phalam dambhartham, for pride. Yajna was performed. This is yajna. And he performed this yajna to send Trishanku up. Again, unfortunately, because the sadhya was ephemeral, he said Swarga is in my hands, but it was not. And what happened is the Devatas did not let Trishanku go to Swarga. Again disappointed. So this goes on. It's a very... what is interesting here is gradually he realized that he has to let go. He had to let go of this ahankara, which Maharaj Parikshit so wisely, so deeply, profoundly was able to act upon, because his sadhana was based on sadhya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, not on ephemeral things. Therefore it said, if you want to attain something, yallabhyate, what is that? Tasyaiva heto prayate tako vido. Right? If you want to attain something, what should you attain? What should you aspire for? Yallabhyate dukkhavat anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabira rambasa. Attain for that which is not changing with time, which is the ultimate object, which is actually our constitutional position. So we see how, anyways, and from a Adi Bhautika perspective, it's also important that the insults that Vishwamitra was getting were also helping him purify. So we cannot again trivialize the journey of Vishwamitra. It said, Avamana tapo labha, sanmana tapokshayah. Avamana tapo labha. If you are getting insulted, aapka tap labhanvit ho gaya. It's adding to your kitty of tapa. Sanmana tapokshayah. You are respected, tap gaya aapka. So there's that profoundness also from an adhyatmic perspective, right? And we may be somewhere between, we may be sometimes, finding lessons from Vishwamitra's behavior also. Of course, we see the different chapters. First Lobha, then there was this Kama, when the Apsara, right? Urvashi. And then there was the episode of Rambha, with whom he got angry. So was Krodha chapter. And ultimately, Vishwamitra, it said that, these are like different kinds of honey traps that the Devatas, they placed from time to time, which he was gradually, organically overcoming. And after eventually performed thousands of years of tapasya, he became like a piece of wood, and then he became indifferent to respect, to honor, dishonor. And that's when he was welcomed by Vasishta. Brahmarshe swagatam testu tapasa rama sutoshitaha brahmanyam tapasa greda prapta vanasi kaushika. He said, welcome the Brahmarshi. We are very pleased with your austerity. So look at the beautiful welcoming note. It's not that Vasishta was intimidated by Vishwamitra's tapasya. It was actually welcome. Sakhyam chakara Brahmarshi is the word used. Sakhyam, friendship. So this is a transcendental platform. It is not that when Maharaj Parikshit was hearing about Srimad Bhagavatam, when the episode of Shringi came, he said, thoda aur emphasis dalo wahan par. Let me see what Shringi went through. It's not that Parikshit Maharaj had any kind of hatred towards Shringi for the turn of events. That's a state of transcendence. And here you see, Vasishta is welcoming. So, we actually have this opportunity every day in our life. Every day when we actually sit down for chanting, japa. our sadhana can actually be the most opportune moment for us to relate to Krishna in our constitutional position. Be ourselves rooted in Svadharma through sadhana. Because in the sadhana, when the sadhyas, Krishna is always listening to us. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna is listening to us. And the holy names, Madhuram Madhurebhyopi Mangalebhyopi Mangalam Pavanam Pavanebhyopi Harer Namaiva Kevalam. So beautiful the holy names are, the Lord is making himself available. All we need to do is tune in. Make sure we don't miss listening to even one syllable of the holy name. That's an opportunity. Because when we are inattentive, Vishwamitra, unfortunately, we learn from him what the price one pays for inattentiveness. Now we are not making a blanket statement. In fact, nothing is binary in the Vedic scriptures. It's not that you be Parikshit or you're lost. No. There are shades. But the result of inattentiveness, whether it's Kama, Krodha or Lobha, was that Vishwamitra, his goalpost kept moving. We are chanting but contemplating on what I'm going to do throughout the day. I'm going to meditate on what the effects of the chanting will be. Actually, if we understand the holy name, the process of chanting and listening to or hearing very attentively the holy name to be the goal in itself, Krishna can actually manifest in our life and make us better instruments. And we see, let's also go to a very beautiful, strong, positive example in this case, which we all come across, right? Just before that, one very interesting verse, Vasishta, he makes this interesting point. Vasishta and Vishwamitra both acknowledge what happened at the beginning of Lord Ram and Lakshmana's entourage to the forest with Vishwamitra. So when Vasishta is trying to explain to Maharaj Dasharath, he says, actually, I have gone through all this. I know Vishwamitra better than anyone else. So very Valmiki Rishi, the way he brings out the essence at the beginning, right? I mean, there was no remorse. There was no, grudge in the heart of Vasishta. He says, he is very, very, Esho Swan Vividhan Vetti Trailokya Sacharachare Naina Manyah Puman Veti Nachavetsyadti Kechana. He glorifies, he says, he has such know-how. He both mobile and stationary words he knows very well. Sthavaram Jangamam. And no one knows him better than me. Vasishta says this. Right? So, and not going into the details of what happened with Vishwamitra, but actually summarizing very respectfully. So this respect is so important in relationships. And as Gopi Parandan Prabhu said, especially for Varnashram, the Brahmana and Kshatriya, mutual respect of each other's strengths is so important. Now, a very beautiful and devotionally enriching example of this we find in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the beautiful chapters 80, 81, where Lord Krishna and Sudama meet. Now we look at the beautiful contemplation of a Brahmana of the highest order, highest class, Sudama. What is his contemplation? Shri Shuka Uvacha Krishnasyasit Sakha Kaschit Brahmano Brahmavittamaha Virakta Indriyartheshu Prashantatma Jitendriyah. His Brahmana friend Sudama was most learned, Brahmavittamaha, most learned in Vedic knowledge, and he was Virakta Indriyartheshu. He was detached from all kinds of sense enjoyment. His mind was therefore peaceful. Now imagine Sudama having Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, also the king of Dwaraka, as his friend. He's still satisfied where he was. He didn't have any impulsive desire to go and meet Krishna. But then his wife came, Pativrata Patibrahma Praha Myalataha Vadanena Sa Daridram Sidamana Yaive Pamana Gamyacha Abhigamya. I'm requesting you, his wife said, please go and meet Krishna. Now, very beautifully in the purport it said, according to Sridhar Swami, the chaste lady was unhappy. Why? Because she could not obtain food to feed her husband. This is another very important hallmark from a adhibhautika perspective of cooperation, which is thinking about one's own responsibility and contemplating on others' rights. Very often we are so preoccupied with one's own rights. Vishwamitra thought, I must have Nandini. Drupada said, I must have what you have promised as a friend, as a childhood friend. The moment you are focused on one's rights and always reminding others about their responsibility, you see very unhealthy relationships unfolding, the things becoming so sour. But here, Sudama is very satisfied. His wife is thinking about Sudama. And she, in fact, goes around begging, saying, you're going and you should not go empty-handed. Please take some chipped rice. So she goes around begging, gets chipped rice, which Sudama has to carry. This also reminds us of, how happy Sudama would have been, right? Krishna is his friend. When Sita Mata and Lord Ram are having conversation in the Ramayana, Lord Ram is telling Sita, please don't come. Why? You be here. Don't come with me to the forest. You respect Bharata. You respect all of my brothers as if they are your sons, and especially Bharata is also the king, not only of the kingdom, but also the chief person now in the family in my absence. And Mother Sita, she laughs and she says, how can you make such a statement? And she doesn't refute the points Lord Ram made, but she says, how can I be here? I cannot be separate from you. Wherever you are, I'm very satisfied. In fact, I'll be ahead of you. Just like when there are difficult times, a shadow, when the sun is behind, the shadows in front of us, I will be like a shadow ahead of you. In fact, I will take up all the thorns. You're concerned about me in the forest, taking up thorns. Lord Ram said, it's not just about that. You in the forest, there'll be waterfalls, beautiful sounding waterfall, and beside that will be the roaring of a lion. So it's not all beauty, right? In the forest, things will be very fearful as well. So please understand, sleeping day in and day out on a bed of leaves, is it acceptable for you as a great queen? And she makes a very interesting point. She says, Ye tvayo kirtita. He says, whatever you have said right now, but where you are, O Lord Ram, tena vastavyatam pratihi. Wherever you are, I should be there. Why? Because tava sneha purha kritam. When your love, your compassion is there ahead, actually that is a good enough shield that I won't feel any of these pangs. Just like Parikshit Maharaj, he says that keep pouring the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam, because that I'm so satiated with the nectar that I'm not troubled by the pangs of hunger and thirst. That's how enriching the holy names are. That's how enriching the presence of the Lord. Sita Devi is so assured, your presence will mean. In fact, Sita says, maybe in the forest, the animals have not seen you earlier. Now when they see you, they'll all make the path clear. She's so assured about the presence of Lord Ram. So here, Sudama, he is so enriched with this proposal from his wife. I can meet Krishna, right? So he says, let me go and meet. I'll get an opportunity to meet him. Whether I ask him for some help or not, I'll have his darshan. I'll have his association. Of course, his childhood memories are also there. So, very beautifully he contemplates, and on his way, when he being repeatedly implored, he says, iti sancintyam manasa gamanaya matim vadadhe. 11, his wife kept on saying, then he contemplated that I will have association of Krishna. To seek Lord Krishna is indeed the greatest achievement in life. That's the biggest achievement. Let me get that achievement. So he meets Lord Krishna, and again we see exemplary behavior from a Brahmana. And how did Lord Krishna receive him? He was surrounded by the Queen Rukmini. The same Queen Rukmini who had actually sent a letter to Krishna through a Brahmana. Now, Sudama, when he met Krishna, Actually, he didn't spell out his desire anywhere. In fact, Krishna was so busy receiving Sudama that Sudama was overwhelmed with the respect of Krishna. He didn't expect anything at all other than just the association of Krishna. And Krishna, in fact, he makes this point. He says, what have you brought for me? Kya leke aaye aap mere liye? Very beautiful verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, Itham vichintya vasana chirabandhan vijanmanaha swayam jahara kimidam iti prutuka tandulan. Prutuka tandulan. The grains of flat rice, what did he do? He snatched. The Lord snatched from the Brahmana's garment the grains of flat rice tied up in an old piece of cloth and exclaimed, what is this? Why have you been hiding this from me? And Krishna says, Patram pushpam phalam toyam. So beautifully quoted from his own words in Bhagavad Gita. A leaf, a flower, a fruit of me, offered with love and devotion satisfies me. And after this episode, obviously, Sudama was totally taken aback. And as he was going back, he was contemplating. It is actually Krishna perhaps thought it's not appropriate for me to get what my wife had asked me to request from him. So it's fine. He was, see, sometimes we develop expectations when we are prodded. But he did not develop expectations despite the fact that he met Krishna, despite the fact that his wife had made a proposal, he came back satisfied. And finally, when that reality dawned upon him, that Krishna has blessed him in his absence with wealth, with tangible wealth beyond imagination, he was overwhelmed with gratitude. So coming back, when we are actually chanting the holy name of Krishna, we may be offering some maybe not even chipped rice. I don't know what we offer. But Krishna is so keen to receive. What to speak of when we are attentive in our chanting? If like Vasishtha, if like Parikshit Maharaj, if like Sudama Brahmana, inspired by them, if we can make sadhana the basis of our daily activities. I was in our conversation with Shamanand Prabhu, it came up, right? That the process of chanting is like a miniature, the sadhana type is actually like our miniature day. The way we have our consciousness tuned in to hearing the holy names and receiving mercy, the same consciousness will percolate the day. We run a small, homeschooling, joint homeschooling initiative, and our children, I teach them some sort of topics. And when they got introduced to the process of chanting, I quoted this one very beautiful point from Sudama Prabhu, that the process of chanting is when, like performing yajna, which they are all, exposed to. And our ears are like the yajna kunda. And we should ensure that not one drop of ghee goes outside the yajna kunda. Similarly, not one drop of the holy name should escape our oral reception while chanting. Let's try doing that. Let's chant in an attentive way. It's all about sankalpa. Parikshit Maharaj made a sankalpa. Vasishtha made a sankalpa. That is, just like fame cannot be separated from a righteous person, Nandini cannot be separated from me. Let's make a sankalpa that my sadhana, I'll try to be so attentive in a humble mood of a servant of servant. I'll be very gratefully attentive that I don't miss out chanting even one syllable and hearing even one syllable, pronouncing clearly and chanting clearly in a mood of service. Hey Krishna, hey Srimati Radharani, please engage me in your loving devotional service. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And you won't believe this beautiful example that Sudama Prabhu gives is really etched in the minds of those children. They really appreciate this example. That when we chant, we should chant with such quality that not one syllable escapes our oral reception. So let's be conscious, and these are beautiful examples of conscious behavior, even in the most adverse situation like Parikshit Maharaj. conscious behavior in the most favorable situations also, like Svadharma. Conscious behavior of Vasishta in adverse behavior from a Kshatriya, which is Vishwamitra. Rooted in sadhana, which is the key. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If there are a question, should we take? Hare Krishna. The meaning of Trishanku. So it's explained Trishanku. The three Shanku basically it comes up many times in Vedic mathematics. It can be a nail around which sometimes you create a right angle, right? Around which you put a rope, Rajju. Rajju is put around a Shanku. So Shanku is basically a nail. It can be also sometimes related to pivot. So Trishanku name is associated with three things that the Raja, the king, he violated. One was desiring to go back, desiring to ascend to Swarga in the same physical body. The second is violating after having consulted Vasishta. And then the third is consulting the sons of Vasishta. In fact, he gave lots of temptations to Vasishta's sons, saying that if you oblige, I'll make you very rich, and so on and so forth. And again, he didn't pay heed to their advice at all. So these are the three aspects of Trishanku. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. It's amazing examples you have given from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Just like you were mentioning the example of Vishwamitra Muni, this tendency from the material world which we carry even in the spiritual practices to achieve something, right? So in our sadhana, in our spiritual practices also, we want to be best. I want to be best in scriptures, in my practices, in my chanting. So that tendency still we carry here. So how can we, work on that?
Very, very deep question, Prabhu. I mean, just to give one more example, Vishwamitra, when he was compassionate to Trishanku, that compassion was competition. Sometimes we have a competition of compassion. I will be more compassionate than Vasishta. So this danger round the corner, khatra jo hai, that is round every corner. Whether one is practicing sadhana or not, I think the important thing is when we become conscious and Krishna conscious, we can become also conscious of these tendencies. That's very important. And I think nobody here can deny that post our performing some activity, when Vishwamitra realized, what am I doing? Kya kar kya raha hu? Right? It comes up many times in his. So whenever that realization is there, when we make Krishna the foundation, Ekala Ishvara Krishna, I am a Bhritya, I am just an instrument, Nimitta. The immediate contemplation can be, if I am just an instrument, and ultimately Krishna's desire has to be fulfilled, then why should I get into a needless competition? Right? From that adhyatmic perspective. From an adhibodhic perspective, from the point of view of examples of social harmony, also we can take inspiration. If I'm going to manipulate based on my sadhana, if I'm going to manipulate based on my so-called spiritual knowledge, right, and try and prove myself, is it actually going to again inspire others? So Krishna also brings up this perspective in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, I have nothing to achieve, still I act. And kings like Janaka Maharaj, Loka Sangraham evapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. So a sense of responsibility should also drive. Sometimes the consciousness is there. At the Adhyatmic level, we realize, right? In retrospect, I made a mistake. I shouldn't be boasting unnecessarily for something which is not even mine. I'm boasting about the plumes of a peacock feather as beautiful eyes. Barhai tete nayane naranam, right? But I don't even have that credentials. And more importantly, and equally importantly rather, is also the pleasure of the Supreme Lord by how we cooperate, how we create inspiration in the lives of others. Is this setting even a right example for others? Just like a mother, parents become very naturally conscious because children are not interested in what parents speak. They are interested in how they behave. Maharaj, Radhanath Swami Maharaj himself gives the examples of his father and his mother how conscious they became when they realized that their behavior can affect the child's behavior. So we all have our circle of influence, and therefore that responsibility should also drive us. I mean, these are the two reflections I have on your question. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.